Have you ever wanted to know where the gold in your jewellery and home electronics comes from? Well, today I'm going to show you. Fern's going to tell you that the first thing you want to find when it comes to gold sampling is to find quartz, but not any quartz. Quartz is one of the most abundant minerals on Earth, and it takes a special set of circumstances for it to be containing gold. It's got to come up with some special ingredients. This here is a quartz seam, and you can see it is quite white. This is a very common type of quartz that you'll find almost anywhere in the world. And usually, 95% of the time, it won't have any gold. What you're really looking for is quartz like this. This is the same exact stuff, but it has a lot of separate minerals in it. But for any of this to make sense, you first need to understand what's happening geologically. Quartz starts its life out as superheated silica. It's a liquid. And when you have earth-moving events, such as earthquakes, you get tiny fissures that open up in the ground. And the quartz, as a liquid, travels up in these gaps. And when it comes up, sometimes it drags these extra minerals up. It could be silver, it could be lead, it could be arsenic, and the one thing that we're all looking for as gold miners is iron. These minerals allow for a special chemical reaction when the quartz starts solidifying and cooling down and forming these veins. And what you end up with is the gold dropping out of the quartz in visible amounts, and that usually only happens when you start getting rocks like this. This is a piece directly out of the reef mine that we're working. You can see it is incredibly dirty, and this white stuff is oxidization. This is a piece of iron sulfide that started its life in the face only a couple of hours ago, and you can see it's incredibly silver. Now sometimes this will be mixed with other elements such as silver or lead or arsenic or whatever, but in this case we know it's iron because if you leave this out in the air, eventually it will literally dissolve into rust. And when it does that, it leaves pieces of quartz that look like this. All these tiny holes and pockets, what we call mouse-bitten quartz, did have iron sulfides in them, just like the rock I showed you, but you can see now the rust-colored staining from it being exposed to oxygen and water. It's taken us a long time to narrow down where the gold in this system was shedding from, and we have found the lode reef that's carrying the gold. So we have a 4-bucket run that we're going to push through our little crusher, and at the end of the day, hopefully we're going to have a pan of very fine free mill gold to show you. And I want to dispel a myth straight away. A lot of new prospectors think that the rivers themselves actually wear down the gold to be tiny little particles, but gold's so malleable it will just bend and flatten out. Gold actually starts its life, at least in a primary gold area like we are, as small gold. And that means that the gold in these buckets is likely going to be very fine. We have found the occasional bigger piece, but most of the time it's less than 50 mesh. This is our crusher. It's a Keene RC1 rock crusher, and it's pretty simple. There's a lawnmower engine on top. There's a drive shaft that goes down to a square hollow tube. There's a feed or an inlet that you tip your ore into. It falls into that square tubing as the prop shaft spins around very fast, and it throws the ore into a sidewall that's got steel teeth, and on impact it explodes and turns to dust. And we need that ore to be turned to dust because the gold is so small. If we still had large pieces of rock, all the gold would still be locked up in it. Right, let's get crushing. This ore produces a lot of dust, and the dust is highly toxic to your lungs. So you've got to wear respirators. Respirators, don't be a dick. Look after your lungs, you've only got 2. This is what our ore looks like after just one pass through the crusher. You can see that I've reduced most of it down to absolute powder. It will need to go through again to get rid of some of these larger rocks. So we took nice big chunks of rock and we turned it into pretty small chunks of rock and a lot of powder. But there's still a lot of rock this big. So we need to put this through the machine again. We just don't want to run the powder back through. So we're going to classify it all down to 1/4 inch. And anything that's over 1/4 inch goes back through the crusher. We'd like all of our dirt to fit through a kitchen strainer, but it takes a long time to classify down for this, and today we just want to know how much gold is roughly in this. So we're doing a bulk sample. If it shows a good tailored color, we will classify down further and make sure we get all the gold, but for now this is good enough. Now that we've got all of our ore crushed down to powder, it is time to wash our concentrates. There are multiple ways you could do this. You could use a little cleanup sluice, you can do panning, you can use miller tables, you use chemical extraction, but for today I'm going to use my potato pan because I love using my potato pan. Now this is an artisan pan that's used right across the world, usually only flat bottom pans you'll find in North America, Australia and parts of Europe. The rest of the world uses these pans. They are incredibly accurate, they're very fast, and they give a good percentage of gold recovery, which is what we need for the suspected fine gold in here. So without further ado, let's start washing dishes, and with a little bit of luck we'll see some colour. This is about as the most professional outfit. We've got an actual flat table.
I've got my glasses to see this tiny stuff.
Now I am not going to reveal every single pan, we're just going to get it down to a handful of concentrates and clean it up a little bit later so we do that accurately at home. But I just want to check, the first one. I have to say there's absolutely no guarantee of gold in any of these. So all of this silver stuff down here is either steel from the crusher or that iron sulfide that we were talking about a little bit earlier. So we're hoping to see another piece of gold. So we're starting to see little pieces of gold come out in our ore. Now again, we are working a primary gold region, so it's only going to be small, and there's no guarantee that there's lots of them. That's why you've got to do heaps and heaps and heaps of sampling to find the right vein. But for now, this is a good learning exercise. We're just blessing the pans with some Irish leprechaun luck to make sure we get some gold. Yeah, one little flaky at the back there, just there. That was our last pan. So now we have super concentrates. We got rid of all the quartz and we're only left now with the sulfides, the gold and the other associated heavies. So we're going to pan this off very carefully and see what kind of a result we got. It doesn't look very rich. It's probably only going to go maybe 1 or 2 grams per ton. If you would like to check out a playlist of videos where I crush really high grade samples that are 5 to 2 ounces per ton, I'll link that up here on YouTube. And meanwhile, let's get this washed down. All right, this will be the last of the light stuff. Alright, let's put it in our little pan, see what we got. Once again, we are not expecting a heap of gold here. We didn't see too much come out. We've got one little piece coming out over here. All that silver there is iron sulfide. Alright, we've got a few specks of colour coming out. There we go. It is super fine stuff. There is not very many chunky bits in there at all. I'd say none. This sample was 40 litres worth of crush. We've already done a 30 litre sample yesterday. We're going to combine the results that we got and get it on the scales, and then we're going to work out the per gram rate that this rock is going. By the looks of it visually on our scale, this isn't worth chasing, but that's not the point. If you don't do these samples, you will never know, and you need to run a lot of dirt to find out. So let's get home and get this scales. We crushed 70 litres of ore, and this is the gold we managed to extract from it next to a Clash Guitars pick for a bit of scale. Now there is something very important that I just said that needs to be noted. Normally you would measure gold that you extract like this from ore in tons or kilograms, not in litres or meters. So we should be working this gold out in a per ton rate, but today we're going to work it out in a cubic meter rate. And that's literally just because we didn't have scales big enough to throw those buckets on. Alright, my scales are all teared off, and we are going to find out what all of that ore got us. 0.067 grams of gold from 70 litres. And that means that if we took a full cubic metre of that ore out of that rock face, which would take a very long time, we'd only net 0.95 grams of gold for every one of them that we took out, which is not very rich at all, and that means we've got to keep looking. However, as I said earlier, please check out the playlist called Hard Rock on YouTube. This is where you'll find videos just like this one, but where we crush super rich ore, where we're getting 2 to 5 ounces per ton. And in the very near future, we're going to be taking this rock crusher up to some of those reefs, such as my dad's reef, which a lot of my long-term subscribers know all about, where we should get some fantastic shows of colour. I hope this has given you a little bit of background on where gold starts its journey down to our rivers and streams, where most of us try our hand at gold panning and sluicing. If you haven't already, please check out the description below on YouTube, where you'll find links to my merch shop as well as all my other social media, and hitting that subscribe and like button also will help grow this channel bigger and better. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please give your dog a delicious scratch behind the ears for me. Peace! And I'll see you on the next adventure.